When I asked Janet Jackson about the years when fame and prejudice walked hand in hand, she paused for a few seconds, then looked straight ahead. "There are women so talented that the world is forced to call them queens," she said, "and yet it still tries to shrink them with whispers." Janet mentioned Whitney Houston, once celebrated as the queen of pop and R&B ballads, but forever surrounded by a fog of hallway stories, not to understand her music, but to confine her within cruel stereotypes. "They turn affection, friendship, and professional relationships into evidence for accusation," Janet said, before turning to Diana Ross, the radiant light of Motown, who was also repeatedly pulled into a vortex of sensational headlines where industry power was recast as personal tragedy. As a journalist who has watched celebrity culture evolve across decades, I understand what Janet is pointing to. From the stifling recording studios of the 1970s to today's social media explosion, rumors are rarely accidental. They are a mechanism that both feeds entertainment and enforces punishment. Behind the spotlight, Janet concluded, there are many more names, great black women artists boxed in by a handful of chilling phrases. And that is where the real story lies, not a list of secrets, but the way the industry and the public learn to consume women as scandal. Before we go further, remember to follow, not to expose, but to see clearly what they were forced to hide, their dignity and their voices. That night, the red lights of Studio 54 were still blazing, and amid the chaotic crowds of late 1970s New York, Chaka Khan appeared like a goddess of fire. A stir rippled through the room. She was not only the voice of Rufus, not just "I'm every woman," but a symbol of passion and freedom. The tabloids of the era wrote bluntly, "Chaka doesn't just sing with fire, she lives in it." From that moment on, whispers began to swirl, suggesting that Chaka's flames burned not only for music, but also through mysterious relationships with fellow stars of her time. Years later, when reflecting on the golden era of the Jackson family and the music industry, Janet Jackson spoke of the backstage atmosphere of those days, where the boundaries between friendship, admiration, and rumor barely existed. In the oral lore of the industry, Chaka Khan's name was often placed alongside major icons, including Michael Jackson. No one ever produced concrete evidence, but amid endless parties and relentless touring schedules, the public imagination found it easy to weave dramatic narratives. Stories circulated that backstage at major shows, Chaka was frequently seen alongside the most powerful figures in R&B and pop. One musician once remarked, "She didn't just walk into the room, she took over the air itself." That line spread quickly, becoming fuel for speculation that anyone, even Michael Jackson, could fall under Chaka's spell. Janet Jackson never confirmed anything specific, yet her acknowledgement that the music world of that era was full of passion and chaos only encouraged further conjecture. When Chaka Khan later stated that she had lived fast, loved fiercely, and had no regrets, the press immediately treated it as a vague confirmation of all the old whispers. Imagined lists began to circulate, pairing Chaka with countless famous names from funk, soul, and pop. The media seized on it, running headlines that implied every legend of the era somehow intersected with her private life. What kept the rumors alive was not just their volume, but how Chaka Khan's very image made them seem plausible. Her irresistible energy, her fiery afro, her voice that was both tender and piercing straight to the listener's heart. All of it formed an icon that defied convention. At a time when black women were often boxed into narrow roles, Chaka emerged as a living act of resistance. Who she was with, who she loved, and how she lived were entirely her own choices. That defiance made the stories linking her to Michael Jackson or anyone else burn even brighter. Amid the storm of speculation, Chaka Khan remained a figure both glorious and tragic in the collective imagination. People eagerly talked about nights when she supposedly vanished after shows, or mornings when she was rumored to be seen with another star. No one knew the truth, but many believed Chaka had it all, at least as constructed by the media and the audience. Ironically, the more rumors multiplied, the more her legend expanded beyond music into the realm of cultural myth. And so, through Janet Jackson's indirect reflections and through the lens of the press, Chaka Khan became a figure the public never stopped craving. A Black R&B queen believed to have touched every heart, not only through her voice, but through the stories passed from mouth to mouth, forever etched into the history of popular music. Janet Jackson once reflected that Diana Ross never merely stepped onto a stage as a star. She seemed to enter real life with the force of a storm, and the industry reacted as though it needed to contain that energy through narrative and headlines. Back then, Janet noted, one piece of personal gossip could overwhelm an entire artistic legacy. She recalled how reports once circulated linking Ross's private life to powerful figures around her, stories that mattered less for their accuracy than for what they symbolized, a supreme diva positioned close to the center of power. Janet emphasized that these accounts were never courtroom facts, but cultural detonations, stories that reshaped how the public was told to see a woman who already commanded attention. As the years passed, Janet said, the rumor machine rarely stopped with a single name. Once speculation took hold, tabloids in the United States and abroad began layering one suggestion on top of another, pairing Diana Ross with influential men across music, film, and global celebrity culture. In that atmosphere, proximity itself became evidence. A shared smile at a private event, a late-night departure from the same venue, or a carefully framed photograph could be enough to ignite another round of conjecture. Nothing was confirmed, Janet recalled, but silence was often read as agreement. Each appearance beside a famous man reinforced a familiar image the press had already rehearsed for the audience: Diana Ross as the ultimate untouchable diva. Within that swirl of stories, Michael Jackson's name occasionally surfaced as well, not through statements or proof, but through the same logic of association that defined the era. Janet described how any connection between two towering figures was treated as irresistible material. To the media, it mattered less what actually happened than how compelling the pairing looked on paper. Diana Ross and Michael Jackson represented overlapping worlds of fame, talent, and myth, and that overlap alone was enough to sustain years of speculation without resolution. What enlarged the mythology further, Janet observed, was Ross's refusal to play the role the public often demanded. She neither apologized for the rumors nor rushed to dismantle them. Instead, she carried herself with increasing elegance and confidence, as if fully aware that scandal could be transformed into a form of symbolic capital. More striking gowns, a serene smile, and an unmistakable sense of belonging in any room made it difficult to separate the artist from the aura constructed around her. Headlines meant to diminish her often amplified her presence, recasting her not just as a singer, but as an emblem of power, desire, and autonomy. Janet also pointed out that the scrutiny was sharpened by race and gender. As a black woman operating at the highest level of fame, Ross was judged through a harsher lens, where independence could be framed as transgression. A single rumored relationship was enough for commentators to label her private life unconventional. A series of rumored connections turned her into a recyclable tabloid figure, the woman whose presence seemed to unsettle powerful men. That image, Janet argued, said as much about the industry as it did about Diana herself. Even today, Janet suggested, Diana Ross is remembered not only for songs like Endless Love, but for the endless stories that traveled alongside her music. Some were whispered, some were printed, and most were impossible to verify. Yet together, they helped shape a legend, a soul icon whose life was forever entangled with rumor, speculation, and the public's need to mythologize greatness. Whitney Houston once appeared like an angel in a white dress, her voice soaring effortlessly toward the heavens. Yet beyond the stage lights, persistent love rumors pulled her back down to a ground filled with thorns. Janet Jackson later reflected that the public no longer saw Whitney only as a flawless vocalist, but as an unfolding narrative where love, pressure, and expectation merged into a tragedy consumed in real time. Her turbulent marriage to Bobby Brown became a media spectacle, transforming the image of a perfect diva into that of a woman living inside a public drama. But, as Janet emphasized, Bobby was only the most visible layer of a much larger web of speculation. What unsettled audiences even more were the whispers surrounding Robin Crawford, Whitney's longtime close friend. Backstage glances and gestures were magnified until they became evidence in the public imagination, fueling assumptions that their bond extended beyond friendship. When Robin later acknowledged having deep feelings for Whitney, many people retroactively framed the story in familiar terms. The Voice leading a double life, an immaculate princess in the spotlight, and behind it, a woman quietly searching for emotional refuge. Within that atmosphere, Janet Jackson noted, Michael Jackson's name was occasionally drawn into the conversation as well. Not through proof or confirmation, but through the era's media logic. When two global icons appeared in proximity, speculation filled the silence. A shared moment, a warm compliment, or a single photograph was often enough for tabloids to suggest narratives that were never substantiated. The rumors did not stop there. Industry whispers painted Whitney as an irresistible presence to many famous men, athletes, fellow singers, even Hollywood actors. Janet recalled how easily stories were manufactured. Whitney merely sitting next to someone at a party could become the basis for a headline the next morning. Instead of skepticism, the public often accepted these stories because her beauty and star power made every theory seem believable. The real pain, Janet suggested, lay in the contradiction itself. Whitney was constructed as a flawless goddess, yet the fractures in her private life made her appear more human, more relatable, and more vulnerable. Her relationship with Bobby Brown pulled her into chaos. Her bond with Robin Crawford revealed a Whitney longing for protection, and the countless other rumors deepened the paradox. In the collective imagination, Whitney Houston was desired by the entire world, yet she seemed unable to find a place of lasting peace. A gentle voice and a brilliant career, yet always surrounded by whispers that never quite faded. Anita Baker stepped onto the stage with songs like Sweet Love and Caught Up in the Rapture, projecting the image of a private, composed woman seemingly untouched by scandal. Yet, as Janet Jackson later observed, that very reserve became fertile ground for speculation. When an artist refuses to narrate her own personal life, the media often rushes in to invent one. Janet recalled that within the music industry of the 1980s, Anita's silence was frequently translated into mystery. Unnamed rumors began circulating, hinting that behind the scenes she maintained close, possibly intimate relationships with major figures in soul and R&B. No names were ever confirmed, but they were significant enough to keep the industry talking. In that climate of conjecture, Michael Jackson's name occasionally surfaced, not as a claim, but as a hypothetical pairing that tabloids found irresistible. A musician once made an ambiguous remark about nights when Anita didn't just sing, she made the room melt. Janet noted how such comments, whether playful or careless, were quickly repurposed by tabloids into implied evidence. Each time Anita chose restraint over explanation, the public seemed more convinced that secrets were being carefully guarded. Backstage, she was even described through contradiction, the quietest presence, yet rumored to carry the loudest private stories. That paradox sustained the mythology. A woman known for calm elegance was rumored to possess a long list of hidden relationships. Which stories were real and which were invented remained unknown, but Anita's refusal to engage fed a familiar narrative. Where there is silence, the public assumes there must be something to uncover. Janet emphasized that this assumption reflected media habits, not verified truth. At one point, a magazine suggested Anita was involved with a famous married artist. The claim faded after a brief denial, yet the rumors themselves lingered. According to Janet, denial rarely ends speculation, it often intensifies it. Audiences continued to frame Anita as a living paradox, a diva of tender love songs shadowed by passionate stories that were never substantiated. To listeners, Anita Baker remains an immortal voice. But in the rumor-filled space Janet Jackson described, she also became an example of how celebrity culture operates. Sometimes, silence does not quiet the noise. Instead, it becomes the loudest scandal the public imagines for itself. Mary J. Blige's divorce from Kendu Isaacs was more than a loud public split. As Janet Jackson later observed, it marked a turning point in how the public framed Mary's life. The woman who once sang on stage about healing and redemption suddenly became the central figure in a real-world drama where personal pain was filtered through legal language and tabloid headlines. The media followed every detail closely, and in the emotional vacuum that followed, a new wave of speculation emerged, suggesting that Mary was surrounded by quiet, unspoken relationships meant to fill the void. Janet recalled that this pattern of rumor stretched back to the early 1990s, when Mary exploded onto the scene with What's the 411? Even then, the hip-hop community buzzed not only about her music, but about her personal life. Whispers circulated in industry corridors, attaching her name to various prominent figures. These were never confirmed facts, but rather pieces of a growing mythology surrounding an artist whose presence was too powerful to remain purely musical. Within that atmosphere, Janet Jackson noted, Michael Jackson's name occasionally surfaced as well. Not through confession or evidence, but through the familiar logic of celebrity culture. When two towering black music icons existed within the same cultural moment, the public imagination instinctively linked them. A shared appearance, a public expression of respect, or even a loose professional connection was often enough for tabloids to imply more than they could ever prove. What stood out to Janet was Mary's response, or lack of one. She rarely issued firm denials, allowing the rumors to circulate alongside her work. Instead of shutting them down, she seemed to channel the emotional weight of speculation into her performances. Each time she was linked to another name, Mary returned to the stage and sang with renewed intensity, leaving audiences to wonder whether the songs themselves were confessions disguised as art. After the divorce, the narrative intensified. Newspapers of all sizes hinted that Mary found comfort among familiar faces in the music world. No concrete proof was ever presented, yet her continued silence encouraged public belief that something was being withheld. From that point, a phrase began to circulate, half affectionate, half ironic. She's not just the queen of hip-hop soul, she's the queen of endless whispers. A title that captured both the brilliance of Mary J. Blige's career and the complicated private life the public imagined around her. If Mary J. Blige carried tragedy like a burden, Janet Jackson suggested that Toni Braxton was often framed by the media as someone whose private life could be transformed into fuel for public fascination. The Queen of Ballads emerged in the 1990s with Unbreak My Heart, a song that made the world ache. Yet offstage, her personal narrative was frequently portrayed as turbulent and unpredictable. At various points in her career, speculation followed her as closely as her music, blurring the line between artistic success and tabloid storytelling. Janet recalled that in certain moments, mere proximity to other high-profile figures was enough to ignite widespread rumor. Within that atmosphere, Michael Jackson's name occasionally entered the conversation, not through evidence or confirmation, but through the symbolic appeal of linking two global icons. As Janet observed, the media often favored compelling pairings over verifiable facts, allowing suggestion to stand in for proof. As time went on, Toni's image continued to be shaped by associations that contrasted sharply with her soft, emotive sound. Each appearance alongside powerful personalities in entertainment prompted divided reactions from the public. Shock from some, admiration from others. Janet argued that this contrast itself became part of the narrative, reinforcing the idea that Toni existed at the intersection of vulnerability and boldness. The rumors did not stop with a single storyline. New names were periodically introduced, spanning sports, film, and music, supported only by circumstantial cues. Distant photographs, shared party appearances or coincidental timing. Within the industry, Toni was sometimes described through metaphors that captured this duality: glamorous yet risky, fragile yet commanding. Such labels, though cynical, were undeniably captivating. Toni once admitted that her love life was more complex than any song she had sung. Janet viewed that complexity as central to her legend. On stage, Toni performed heartbreak like a wounded angel. In the public imagination, she moved through rumor and speculation like a queen unafraid of fire. Every whisper, every name attached to hers became another thread in the story that kept Toni Braxton firmly embedded in popular culture. A woman perceived as both broken and powerful, forever surrounded by narratives that refused to fade. Faith Evans entered the history of R&B and hip-hop, not only because of her smooth, expressive voice, but also because her personal life was continually framed as a dramatic narrative. Janet Jackson once remarked that Faith was the kind of artist whose music and private story were almost inseparable in the public imagination. From a young age, Faith found herself positioned at the center of powerful musical circles, and that visibility alone invited speculation. According to Janet, when a woman occupies such a prominent place in the industry, rumors rarely wait for confirmation. They emerge on their own. During hip-hop's most volatile years, Faith was repeatedly pulled into backstage stories where fact and conjecture blended together. These whispers traveled so widely that they became part of cultural memory, even without proof. Within that environment, Janet Jackson noted, Michael Jackson's name occasionally surfaced, not as a documented relationship, but as a symbolic association. When two artists of immense influence exist within the same cultural era, the media often connects them through implication rather than evidence. A compliment, a shared cultural moment, or even an indirect professional link could be enough to fuel speculation. After major turning points in her life and career, Faith Evans remained within the orbit of public curiosity. Every new connection, romantic or otherwise, was interpreted through the lens of her past. Janet suggested that the audience had grown accustomed to seeing Faith as someone perpetually surrounded by intensity, where calm moments were rarely allowed to stand on their own. What set Faith apart, Janet observed, was her response to the rumors. She did not retreat from them, nor did she attempt to present herself as untouched by controversy. Instead, she carried herself with openness, as if accepting that her life had become part of a broader story the public insisted on telling. That composure only reinforced her image as a defining diva of a turbulent era. Through it all, Faith Evans became more than an R&B singer. In Janet Jackson's reflection, she stands as a living symbol of how romance, rivalry, and rumor intertwine within hip-hop history, proof that in celebrity culture, a private life can evolve into a legend alongside the music itself. If Faith Evans was associated with fierce, open drama, Janet Jackson suggested that Erykah Badu represented a different kind of scandal, quiet, enigmatic, and deeply magnetic. Known as the High Priestess of Neo-Soul, Erykah was also framed by the public through a more provocative lens, a woman whose presence seemed to transform those who entered her orbit. That aura of mystery ensured that her personal life was never separated from myth. Janet recalled how the list of rumored connections surrounding Erykah often left the media fascinated. Artists widely regarded as creative geniuses appeared to enter unusually profound phases after being associated with her. Observers began to connect the dots, artistic breakthroughs, introspective lyrics, philosophical statements, and placed Erykah at the center as an unspoken influence. Within that stream of speculation, Janet Jackson noted, Michael Jackson's name occasionally appeared, not as a confirmed story, but as a symbolic association. When two figures both represent innovation and spiritual depth in black music, the media tends to imagine links between them. A shared admiration, a moment within the same cultural space, or a loosely perceived artistic kinship was often enough to spark conjecture. As the rumors spread, questions multiplied. Did Erykah possess a kind of magic that reshaped the men who passed through her life? Some American headlines leaned into that idea, portraying her as a bewitching force, an image that simultaneously elevated and scrutinized her. Admiration and suspicion grew side by side. What distinguished Erykah, Janet observed, was her refusal to clarify the narrative. She neither denied nor confirmed the stories. Draped in colorful scarves and maintaining a serene smile, she allowed ambiguity to stand as her strongest statement. The public remained captivated, uncertain where love ended, art began, and rumor took over. As a result, Erykah Badu emerged as a cultural phenomenon, a diva who belonged to no one, yet left an imprint on the hearts and creative paths of many. In Janet Jackson's reflection, she stands as a true high priestess, someone who turned speculation into legend and mystery into an essential part of her enduring mystique. Brandy was once embraced across America as the quintessential America's sweetheart of the 1990s. Youthful, soft-spoken, and seemingly untouched by controversy. Yet, as Janet Jackson later reflected, that very purity made Brandy especially vulnerable to rumor. When the public grows accustomed to an immaculate image, even the smallest deviation can be magnified into speculation. Janet recalled that early in Brandy's career, her private life often attracted more attention than her music. Professional connections and friendships within the R&B world were quickly reframed by the media as dramatic narratives. Confirmation was rarely required. Suggestion alone was enough to sustain headlines, slowly shifting Brandy's image from pop princess to a figure surrounded by whispers. Within that atmosphere, Janet Jackson noted, Michael Jackson's name occasionally surfaced, not as a documented relationship, but as a symbolic association. When a young star is mentioned alongside an established icon, the media often treats proximity as implication. A brief encounter at an event, a public compliment, or a shared cultural space could be transformed into a storyline without evidence. As Brandy's career advanced alongside major television and music projects, the contrast became sharper. Audiences believed they were watching an idealized figure on screen, while tabloids insisted there was another, more turbulent story unfolding behind the scenes. According to Janet, the label America's Sweetheart became a double-edged sword, elevating Brandy's status while permanently subjecting her to heightened scrutiny. Looking back, Janet suggested that Brandy's experience illustrates the unforgiving nature of celebrity culture. A gifted singer who worked to maintain a positive public image found her legacy repeatedly filtered through rumor rather than artistry. In that sense, Brandy's story says less about her personal life and more about an industry that often allows speculation to overshadow music itself. Ashanti entered the early 2000s as a true R&B princess, young, radiant, and widely seen as the face of a new era. As Janet Jackson later reflected, that combination of talent and flawless image quickly turned Ashanti's private life into a focal point of public curiosity. When an artist is elevated by expectation, every personal connection becomes potential material for speculation. Janet recalled that during Ashanti's peak years, her professional chemistry with fellow artists was often reframed as something more. Successful duets, repeated collaborations, and shared stage moments were scrutinized until they evolved into rumors with lives of their own. Confirmation was rarely necessary. Repetition alone was enough to convince audiences that there must be something beneath the surface. Within that atmosphere, Janet Jackson noted, Michael Jackson's name occasionally appeared, not as a substantiated story, but as a symbolic association. When a young R&B star hailed as a princess exists in the same cultural moment as a global icon, the media often links them through imagination rather than evidence. A public compliment, a shared cultural space, or even temporal proximity could spark conjecture. The speculation surrounding Ashanti expanded in multiple directions. She was frequently portrayed as the object of attention within the hip-hop and production world, surrounded by figures whose names added intrigue rather than clarity. Headlines adopted language that both praised and implied, framing her as an untouchable figure perpetually encircled by rumor. According to Janet, this framing gradually shaped how the public perceived her, regardless of what was true. What intensified the narrative was Ashanti's own silence. She rarely addressed the rumors directly, choosing instead to focus on her music and maintain a glamorous public presence. That ambiguity, Janet suggested, preserved her mystique, while also tethering her permanently to the image of a rumor girl in popular culture. Looking back, Ashanti stands as a clear example of the diva paradox. On stage, she shone as an untouchable princess. Off stage, her private life was transformed into an endless song, one in which every new verse was written, not by her, but by the whispers of the public imagination. The 10 R&B divas we have just explored are not only musical legends, they are also living evidence of the price paid for life under constant scrutiny. The stories and rumors, whether whispered or amplified into myths, may be true or false, but they undeniably helped construct a dramatic haze around their names. Behind the spotlight, they were still human beings longing for love, seeking understanding, and sometimes carrying emotional fractures that never fully healed. Ironically, the very drama, controversy, and scandal that surrounded them made the public remember them more vividly. Each diva transformed her life into a song filled with peaks and valleys, moments of brilliance, moments of uncertainty, yet always leaving an undeniable impact. They became symbols of freedom and individuality while simultaneously reflecting the fragility and vulnerability inherent in an artist's life. If this journey resonated with you, consider sharing your reflections and continuing to explore the untold stories behind these immortal music icons. This is not an ending, but the opening chapter of a much longer conversation, one where music, fame, and humanity remain forever intertwined.